Hey guys, Gabe here. A couple things before we start this episode. First, a little bit of a disclaimer. Our friend Steve was joining us in the studio while we were recording this episode, and he was planning only to be there just as a spectator to, watch and listen as we made the episode. And so we didn't have him on a mic or anything like that. And there were a few times where he did have some input that he gave while we were recording, and I had originally planned on just editing around it, maybe putting some of that into the outtakes for our patrons. But some of his input was actually really, really good, and so I made the decision to actually include much of it in the final episode. So I just wanted to give a disclaimer that there are going to be certain parts of this episode where either he or Jeff are not directly on mic. So some of the audio quality is a little bit below our usual standards. I did my best to, make it audible at least, so that, it could still be a part of the episode, but just a little thing, if anybody's listening to this and they hear some parts that sound like they're not as good of quality as our audio usually is, I just wanted there to be a reason for that. So anyway, another thing I wanted to mention, for some reason we completely forgot to mention it in the episode, but Jeff and I just guested on an episode of the Cantrip podcast. So the link to that will be in the show notes. I've already put it on social media and all that. So go and check that out. It was a ton of fun. We talked about the Warlock class in D&D. It was a ton of fun. Great episode. So go and listen to that whenever you can. Once again, that is the Cantrip podcast. Also, one last thing. I do mention it in the episode, I think, but Crit Academy's Unearthed Tips and Tricks book, which I personally had a pretty big part in helping to write, is going to be coming out on December 1st. So as of this episode going out, that's in about 4 days. So that's coming out very, very soon. I'll be blowing it up on social media all over the place. But if you get a chance, I think you should check out this book. I think it's going to be great. It's going to be great quality, great writing in there, great artwork, great ideas behind it, great everything. So check that out. It's going to be great. So check out our links on our social media whenever you get a chance. Anyway, thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the best tabletop gaming experience possible. My name is Gabe.
And my name is Jeff.
And we do have a special guest in the studio today.
Oh.
I don't know if he'll be saying anything right now, but eventually we will have him in front of a mic a little bit later. Steve, why don't you say something?
Hi.
That was Steve.
That's
so
Steve.
Thank you very much, Steve, for joining us today.
Sorry.
So for our listeners, we are going to answer your questions today. But first, I have a question, and that is for Jeff.
Yeah.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I am stuffed full of fried mushrooms right now.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh no, it's fine. I like them. They're good, delicious.
They're still mushrooms, though.
Mushrooms are. What don't you like about mushrooms?
They're gross.
What like the flavor? The
I don't
texture?
know. I don't even. Maybe the texture.
Okay. Well, like I can understand either one of those things. I just like to know because I think they're delicious and I like the texture.
I'll be honest. A big part of it is just knowing that they are fungus. Like in my mind, my mind tells me that's a bad thing.
No, I mean fungus. Like don't go picking mushrooms in the forest and eating them.
Correct.
You want to.
Yes. PSA for everybody out there.
Yeah.
Don't eat mushrooms unless you are like trained in what mushrooms are good or bad.
Right.
Because the benefits of eating a good mushroom do not outweigh the drawbacks of eating a bad mushroom.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Edible mushrooms are tasty if you like mushrooms.
Yeah.
The non-edible ones are like very deadly sometimes.
Right. So a couple things to mention. I guess when this episode goes out, our arcade live stream will have been a few days ago.
Oh, yeah.
So thank you for everybody who tuned in.
Yep. ?
I hope people tuned in. Thank you to everybody who was there.
Yeah. And thank you all to all of the technology that didn't screw up.
Yes. Now I'm going to have to cut this part out though, if the technology did screw up.
No, everything's going to be fine, Gabe.
Okay. I also want to mention that, in January, so in like over a month, I'm going to have a big chunk of time off. So I'm going to need to find something cool to do podcast related when that happens.
You can always come by and record some FriendQuest with me.
Gosh, I don't know, Jeff. Oh, my schedule's looking real busy all of a sudden. No, that's
Suddenly I'm busy that week.
no, that sounds awesome. I'm sure we'll get some cool stuff done.
Yeah.
And I meant to mention this is just a throwaway thing. I meant to mention this a few weeks ago, but I came up with a good D&D module, a very short D&D module that I would like both of you actually here in the studio that I would like you to give me some feedback on. So I want you to imagine, so this is a D&D module. The party, somebody in town tells, hey, there's like a weird cave up in the mountains that was not there a couple days ago.
Oh.
Go and investigate this. So the party goes up to this cave. They see, sure enough, there's a big cave in the mountain. There wasn't a cave there recently. I don't know. Laying outside the cave is a bag. So like a backpack, just like lying on the ground.
Okay.
The party picks it up, look inside, and there's like stuff in here, but they notice that the inside of the bag is bigger than the outside of the bag. So obviously this is some sort of a bag of holding. You know, maybe there's some potions or some money or something in it. Nothing dangerous, nothing trapped, whatever. It's not a bag of devouring. It's just a regular bag of holding. Anyway, so the party takes it. They go on their way. They go inside this cave. And everybody dies. Because the cave is an extra dimensional space. Obviously, because it wasn't there before. Now it is. And because the party brought a bag of holding into the cave.
Oh, jeez.
Because of how bag of holdings are awful, they're all dead. Okay, everybody make new characters. And don't get a bag of holding because bag of holdings are stupid.
10 out of 10 would die again.
Awesome.
In bird culture, this would be considered a dick move.
It is a dick move, I understand. But it is a necessary dick move to get people to understand that all of the rules around extra dimensional spaces, particularly all the rules around bags of holding, are stupid. Just remember, guys, it's a bag that you put things in, and it functions like a bag in every way except for the fact that you can put more things in it than you'd think. That's all it has to be. That's all it should ever have been. It's not a portal to the astral plane. It's not... the world is not going to end if you flip it inside out, whether you've read the rules or not. The rules say clearly it does not.
Right.
But
it's not something that would be studied on Star Trek.
Correct. Guys, it's just... don't overthink it. It's a bag. You put things in it. It holds more stuff than you would think. That's it.
But if you put it at the bottom of, like, the ocean... No, I'm done.
You guys can't hear, but I'm staring at Jeff as if challenging him to continue with that line of thinking.
No, I'm done.
Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that. I posted it on like Facebook and Twitter, but I did not get the recognition that I should have, darn it. Anyway, bags of holding suck. So you want to get into this episode, Jeff?
Sure.
Okay. I want you, both Jeff and Steve, to imagine that you are sitting at the dinner table. It is the harvest festival or whatever. You've got family around. Everybody's having a great time. And you're about done eating this turkey. There's this huge turkey. It's delicious. You ate a whole bunch of it. It's been smoked to perfection. Mwah. Speaking of which, hopefully my turkey was delicious last week because I have a new smoker now.
Oh, right. Yeah, your electric one.
Yeah, because we talked on InterPartyConflict about how bad the smoker I previously had was. Anyway, so you ate this turkey. It was delicious.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, one of your relatives raises up the wishbone.
Oh.
And they look at you expectantly and they say, hey, how about we pull on the wishbone? So you reach over, you grab the wishbone, you think of a wish, you think to yourself, I wish I had a ton of money. I wish I had all the riches in the world. Maybe something a little bit better worded so as not to invite abuse. But so you pull on the wishbone, you pull on it, it snaps. You've got the bigger half.
Yes.
And so your wish is granted. And do you know what happens, Jeff?
What's that?
You find yourself in the dragon's hoard.
Woohoo!
Which I guess is a good and a bad thing because you're not home anymore. You're in a dragon's hoard.
Right, yeah.
There's a dragon somewhere, you know. Maybe I should have mentioned that. There is a dragon in the room.
Well, you end up on the table at Dragon Thanksgiving.
Yes. 10 out of 10.
Yay.
Good job. 10 out of 10 would wish again. Yes, thank you, Jeff. So today's Dragon's Hoard item is submitted by Damien via Discord. And I believe this was actually created by him, but it was actually submitted on D&D Beyond. So anybody who wishes can find it on D&D Beyond. But I'll also put the link in the... It's not going to be in the show notes. I always put our Dragon's Hoard items on their own page, both on the blog. There's a page that has every Dragon's Hoard item we've ever had.
Yeah.
Also on our subreddit. I have a running page there with every Dragon's Hoard item. So anyway, the item today is called the Bound Rapier. Unfortunately, it's nothing Thanksgiving themed.
Yeah.
Of course. Thanksgiving is over by the time people are listening to this.
And it's not the round Bapier either. So.
That is correct. It is not.
That is what I first read when I looked over at the screen. I was like, the round Bapier.
What if it was, though? Anyway, so yeah, anybody who wants to can search for this on D&D Beyond or just find the link in our notes. So Bound Rapier is a rapier. It is rare. This rapier is uniquely built for what appears to be a giant of a man. The blade is longer and wider than a standard rapier, and the hilt looks like it was made for a hand and a half sword, though the design and function is still clearly a rapier. The hilt of this ornate rapier is wrapped in fine silver chain, and its pommel is a weighted ball with a 3-inch spike on the end. This rapier can be wielded with 2 hands as if it had the versatile property, dealing 1d10 plus strength damage. When the rapier's command word is spoken, the pommel falls free of the hilt, connected by 5 feet of the same silver chain that makes up the grip. As a bonus action, the wielder can attack with the chain as an offhand weapon, dealing 1d6 plus strength damage. Proficiency with a rapier allows you to add your proficiency bonus to the attack roll for any attack you make with it. So that's it.
Huh.
You know, it's not like it doesn't have any crazy abilities. It is a rapier that if you want to, you can use in 2 hands to deal like, I guess like a bastard sword damage.
Now, if it's still is it still a rapier and still has the finesse feature?
It appears that it does. So I think you could choose to use do a D10 plus strength or a D10 plus dex. I believe, because at the bottom it does have notes, piercing and finesse.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, finesse weapon with versatility.
Yeah. And then if you want to, you can basically turn it into a double weapon like from 3rd edition.
Sure.
Where you could attack with one end of your quarterstaff and then the other end of your quarterstaff.
Right, yeah. Okay. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, I think it's a really neat thing. I would even venture to say it doesn't necessarily have to be magical.
Right, yeah.
It's just kind of a cool weapon.
Yeah. And maybe like if the DM might think that something like this would be like a little unbalanced, maybe make it that they have to spend some downtime like learning how to use it properly or something.
If it's unbalanced, you just have to put a heavier ball on the end of the chain. Boom, because balance.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a physical object, so it has a center of gravity.
Got it.
So I mean, I guess the question has to be asked: if you were to enchant it, like make it +1, does that apply to both ends? In earlier editions, it didn't.
Right. Oh yeah, you're right.
So I don't know. I think it'd be fine to do so. I think it's, because it was up to the DM.
You'd have like the orcish double axe where one end was thundering and the other end was light was
like shocking. Or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Huh. Yeah. There's cool stuff that could be done with that
for sure.
Anyway, that much I would leave up to the DM, but I think this is a cool weapon.
Yeah.
You don't often see just like weapons in D&D.
Sure.
I mean, 5th edition kind of simplified the weapon list.
Yeah,
so you don't really
did.
need a ton of weapons.
Like there isn't exotic weapons anymore.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, like which part of me is like, oh, but then it's like, well, we don't need more things on the end of spiked chains. Like
That's true. Yeah, because in 3rd edition, for
Steve
everybody
is
listening,
shaking his head no.
that very much was, you want to make a new weapon? I'll just put something on the end of a chain.
Right.
There you go, new weapon. So that was the Bound Rapier. Pretty simple. We don't necessarily need to have too much discussion about it, but it's really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
I kind of want to make a character that uses something like this, or give this to somebody in a game.
Yeah, see what they do with it.
Cool. All right. So if anybody wanted to submit magic items for us to discuss, Jeff, how would they get those to us? Or not just magic items.
Oh yeah.
We don't just talk about magic items on the show.
Sure.
If they wanted to submit questions for us to discuss, or stories for the funeral pyre,
right?
How would they do that?
Ooh.
Steve, you got anything?
Yeah, I don't know. Steve?
I'm pretty sure you email
Oh, right. At InterPartyConflict@gmail.com. Right.
Yes.
Thank you, Stephen.
So before we go any further, we have a special giveaway to give away. I mean, it's the same giveaway we have every week, but it's always special.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, who is our winner this week?
Our winner this week is Timothy K.
Whoa, winner.
Gobble, gobble, gobble.
Yes. And that's not my brother, Timothy K. I do have a brother that is a Timothy K, but
right.
it's not him.
Of course.
So, yes. So, Timothy K, congratulations. You should be getting that pretty soon. If you don't get it within the next couple days, let us know. Be sure to check your spam folder. And be sure to let Goblinstone know what you think. Let them know whether you liked it or not. I don't know if I said the name of the adventure.
Oh, yeah.
It's Chapel on the Cliffs. Chapel on the Cliffs, courtesy of Goblinstone. It's a great adventure, great low-level sort of horror-themed 5th edition adventure. Mm-hmm. So, Timothy K, hopefully you have a great time with that adventure. And yeah, let them know what you think of it. Cool. We also want to tell everybody about our Patreon. Patreon is a platform where you can pledge to donate a small amount of money to us every month. You could donate $1 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, anything in between, and you'll get cool bonus content for it. Mm-hmm. So we've got outtakes on there. We've got fantasy fiction for everybody. We've got bonus episodes. We've got a Roll20 game run by Jeff. In fact, by the time this episode comes out, I think your second session of the game you were running will have been yesterday.
I think so, yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
So that was great. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff. I was there.
You were.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we got a lot of cool rewards on there, so check those out and see if it seems good enough to donate. If you don't want to donate, hey, just tell a friend. Maybe leave us a review on iTunes.
Yeah.
And if you can't even do that because iTunes sucks, maybe you don't have any friends, just listen. Just the fact that you're listening is enough.
Yeah, we appreciate all of you.
Yeah. Yeah, so thank you to all of our patrons who are already with us, and I'm trying to think of what sort of cool stuff I want to do with the new year in just a month or so.
Right.
So hopefully we'll go in some cool directions then.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. I also want to tell everybody to go check out Crit Academy. It's another great podcast in the Crit Nation Network. CritAcademy.com. Justin, Ian, and Brandon create new and reusable content for DMs and players alike. I'm crossing my fingers that this is going to be correct, but apparently I talked last episode about the Unearthed Tips and Tricks book. Mm-hmm. Apparently it's supposed to come out beginning of December.
Oh.
Maybe I'll delete this part.
I
don't know, but if it's not out now, it'll be out very soon.
Yeah, keep an eye out for it.
Keep an eye out for that. I'll probably be blowing up social media with links for that.
Yeah,
so,
cool.
So yeah, check that out, and thank you to Justin and everybody over there who helped make that happen. So also check out D&D Character Lab. It's another great podcast. Jeff and I hosted on their show a few weeks ago. They create characters every week. Garen and Dan create characters every week, and then they pit them against each other and argue about whose character is better. It's such a great podcast.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
You should all go check it out. It's awesome.
Yeah, you guys should start up your own podcast shows just so you can be guests on their show because it was a blast.
Yes, I agree. All right. Well, cool. Jeff, you want to get into some questions?
Sure.
All right.
Our first question comes from Jake through email, and they ask, the current system in D&D 5th edition for crafting is absurd. What does a DM do to make crafting a much more viable option?
Yeah. So for this question, we're actually going to be expanding on the question a bit. When we first decided to do this, it's only asking about crafting in 5th edition. We also decided to talk about crafting in earlier editions as well.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be talking about crafting in 3rd edition. Steve will actually be providing some valuable input on that.
Yes.
We also decided to expand it to also talk about magical item crafting. Mm-hmm. So we will talk about how magic items were crafted, how non-magical items were crafted in these different editions, so that you can see how it has changed over the years. Right. And then that will probably color a bit how we decide to answer the second half of this question.
And I feel like if you are looking for different options for crafting, looking at earlier editions, crafting is not something that's necessarily gonna, magic items aside,
sure,
mundane crafting it's not something that's gonna break the game, I don't think.
Depending on how it's implemented, right. Probably not. Yeah.
Yeah. If you change it up a certain way, you want to fit it to, the needs of the adventure, I guess.
Sure. So I guess let's go in chronological order again, so that listeners can see how it kind of progressed.
Sure.
And I guess I'll say, starting off, I don't think there was a crafting system in the rules for 1st or 2nd edition.
Okay.
I haven't played those editions enough to know, but I'm pretty sure those ones were like very rules light in a lot of regards.
Sure. I'm trying to think. I think I just like made up stuff in second edition.
Probably.
Like it was mostly just making.
Steve is vigorously nodding his head.
It's like that's all I remember is like, yeah, I have this cool item. I like it. Cool.
Yeah.
It does this.
Also 12.
We were also 12.
There could have been rules and we just ignored them.
Right. That's very true.
Yeah. So we're not really going to be focusing on first or second edition, but I do want to talk about third edition crafting. We're talking about non-magical crafting first. We'll talk about magical crafting in just a little bit. So I made some notes about how crafting worked in third edition, and this episode has a very similar format to our grappling episode.
Oh, geez.
As will become apparent.
Oh, geez.
There was a lot to it for really no reason, I think.
Okay.
Don't mean to tip my hand a little early, but so in third edition and 3.5, I guess I got these from the 3.5 player's handbook, but it was very, very similar. I don't think there were any notable differences between the two. So in third edition, if you wanted to be good at crafting things, you had to put skill points into crafting skills.
Right.
Each individual type of crafting was its own skill.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you're in fifth edition. Let's say you were a character that have 4 skills that you're proficient in. That meant that in third edition D&D, you would probably have roughly 4 skills that you could be maxed out in. You would have to then choose how many of these 4 skills do I want to be devoted to woodworking and metalworking and so on.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a big part of your character, but like nowadays, losing a skill or having to devote a skill to something you're not going to use is a real big deal.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a big deal back then. A little bit less so because you could split them up a bit. You could have half proficiency in this thing and half proficiency in that. But you did have to devote valuable character resources into each individual craft.
Right. So yeah, if you wanted to be a carpenter and like if you wanted to make like structures or something like that, then you have to have like carpentry and like masonry.
Correct.
So you have to use you put points into 2 different skills in order to like basically if you wanted to like help build a town or something.
Yeah. Like if you wanted to build a house, you probably needed an entire party of people with different focuses.
Right, yeah.
So multiple skills, and they were all intelligence based as well.
Right.
So, maybe a DM could rule that one thing was like strength based or something, but generally speaking, all craft skills were intelligence. So you put points in that. If you were trying to use it just to make money and not to actually create a specific item that you were going to have in your possession, then you could make a check, and then for the given week, that check represented how many you would get half that many gold pieces. So if you made a check and you got a 12, that meant that week you made 6 gold doing carpentry.
Right.
Or whatever. Like nowadays, that kind of stuff is just kind of like downtime activities, and they've simplified a lot of that.
Yeah.
Every time you want to make a specific object, though, there is a specific skill DC to craft on. I'll get more to that in a second. But then there were also certain spells and abilities that you could use to kind of avoid the whole process or make the whole process a little bit different. For example, if you have the fabricate spell, if you're a wizard with fabricate spell, and you had, let's say you have a bunch of lumber sitting there, you could cast fabricate, make a carpentry check, and then depending on the result of your check, you would immediately have the raw materials would get immediately turned into whatever it was you were trying to craft.
Right, yeah.
So if you had that spell, you could basically just immediately make it. But again, you'd have to make that check based on the DC of whatever it is you're trying to make. Another thing that's worth noting is the Ironwood spell lets you make things out of wood that then function like metal. So if you have access to the Ironwood spell, you could use carpentry in the place of metalworking. In theory, you could make a sword out of wood and then cast Ironwood on it, and you basically have a metal sword.
Yeah. Huh.
Then another one is Minor Creation. It is a temporary spell, like you cast a spell and you create an object. I think you're limited to like simple objects, but if you have a skill, some sort of craft skill, you can make a check, and then if you succeed on the DC, you then you temporarily create an intricate object or a more complicated object based on what it is you're trying to make. So a person without the skill might be able to make like a chair, but a person with a lot of ranks in carpentry or whatever could make I don't know, a really, really nice chair. We don't really know where I'm going with this example.
Sure. A chair with like hidden compartments or something.
Sure. Let me give you a better example. Someone with a good enough check in like craft gem cutting could make a diamond that looks like a nice, valuable diamond.
Right.
Of course, it's still magic and it'll go away once the spell is done. But a person without ranks in that skill wouldn't be able to do that because they don't have the skill to know how to make a perfectly cut diamond.
Sure. Okay.
I think there might actually be rules on what materials you can make. But anyway, I don't feel like checking the book. Anyway, so another thing of note before I get into how the actual process works is anyone without tools on hand can still do it, but they take a -2 on their check, which means they have to use like, they have to like jury rig something or use like makeshift tools. But if you have masterwork tools, you get a +2. Okay. So just having regular tools means your check is just your check. No tools or improvised tools is a -2. Masterwork tools is a +2.
Yeah.
So once you actually want to craft something, so you've got you're about to buy the materials, you've got the skill, you've got the time. First, you spend a third of the item's market cost on raw materials. Mm-hmm. So let's say a table costs 3 gold pieces. You would spend 1 gold piece on the raw materials.
Right.
Assuming you don't screw up, that means that the table cost you 1 gold instead of 3 gold. So you could use it to save money, I guess, but we'll get to that. So you spend a third of the cost in raw materials. You then make a skill check that represents 1 week's work. If you succeed, you multiply your check result by the DC. To give you an example of what some of the DCs are, for an alchemist to make acid is a DC 15. Mm-hmm. For a bow maker to make a composite longbow is a 15. A regular longbow is a 12. A weaponsmith trying to make a simple melee weapon is a DC 15. A DC 12. A martial weapon's a DC 15, and exotic weapon's an 18. So the checks aren't particularly high, especially considering in this edition, you could whore out your skills. Yeah. So you could get like a +30 to something if you wanted to at fairly low levels. But anyway, so you'd make a check. So let's say I'm a bow maker. I'm trying to make a bow, and the DC is a 12. I'm trying to make a regular longbow, DC 12. I make my check for a week, and then that check is a 13. So I succeeded. Uh-huh. So I multiply 13 by 12.
Okay.
So obviously the answer is 156. For anyone who has gone to school, clearly the answer is 156. Okay, now I do have to say that's a joke because we just had to stop the recording because I had to find out what the answer was. Anyway, so multiply 12 by 13, the DC by my check, 156. That represents the number of silver pieces worth of bow I have crafted in that week. So now a longbow in 3rd edition was 75 gold.
Okay.
So that means in 1 week I made about 1/6 of the. I hope my math isn't horribly wrong on that, but I'm not going back on it. So about 1/6 of the job is done after 1 week. That is, again, I got a 13. The DC is a 12. I would then continue doing that week after week after week until the total number of silver pieces equals the total cost of the item. So like 750 silver or 75 gold. I would keep doing it until I have succeeded. It probably sounds like this is going to take a really long time, both in game and out of game. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And you are correct. We'll get to some more examples of that in a minute.
It doesn't take 6 weeks to make a bow.
Well, I mean, there are some things that can speed it up. I'll get to that in a second. Sure. But I should mention, that's assuming you succeed on the check.
Right.
If you fail on the check, if you fail by less than 5, so 4 or less, you don't lose any progress, but you don't make any progress either. You just spent a week
doing nothing.
Essentially doing nothing.
Right.
Twiddling your thumbs, wondering how you're going to get this shaft straightened or whatever. I don't know.
Right.
If you fail by 5 or more,
you're waiting for that shipment of bowstrings to come in from Amazon.
Sure. So if you failed by 5 or more, and it comes from the actual Amazon.
Right.
Yes.
From the Amazons.
The Amazons. Yes. So if you fail by 5 or more, you've just lost progress in that. I mean, I guess you didn't lose progress, but you've ruined some of the raw materials. you've ruined half of your raw materials. So let's start this over a little bit. Steve has given me a very exasperated face here. So a longbow costs 75 gold.
Right.
And keep in mind, this is a fairly expensive weapon to be making, which
Sure.
I think kind of gives a good example of why this is kind of stupid.
Yeah.
But like a longsword would probably be like 10 gold or something. So a longbow, 75 gold. At the very beginning, you spend 25 gold for the materials. If you don't ever fail your check, that means it's only ever going to cost you 25 gold.
Yeah.
However, if you fail, you have just lost 12 and a half gold of the materials. You now have to pay for those materials to be bought again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there is explicitly anything in here about having, like, it doesn't take anything away from the amount of virtual money that you have made up. So like, let's say this is your third week of making this bow and you're at like 36 silver or 36 gold's worth. I don't think it puts you back at all, but you do have to spend more for the raw materials.
Right. It's making it less and less worth it.
Correct.
To craft it.
Yeah, because if you keep failing, you might end up spending more having made it than you would buying it.
Right.
So anyway, so again, spend a third, make a check representing a week's worth. Your check result times the DC equals the silver pieces you completed. I said what happens if you fail. But a thing that you can do if you want to do it faster, essentially all you really have to do is increase your check result, because again, it is multiplied by it.
Sure.
But you can also, there is a little clause in there that you can voluntarily increase the DC by 10. So let's say the DC is a 12 for the longbow. You could say, I'm going to try to rush this job, and that's going to be a DC 22. It's going to be a lot harder, a lot more chance of failure.
Right.
But if you succeed, you're going to multiply at least 22 by 22.
Right. And then this is in 3rd edition where, like you said before, you can really stack a skill.
You can really stack a skill, yeah.
Like if you're really into it, you could have a plus 30 to your check.
Yeah.
So that extra 10 isn't going to mean anything. Like you might as well.
It's just going to save you time, basically.
Yeah, it's just going to save you time. So so like there will be a certain point where it's not going to take you nearly as much time, to make something. So,
Correct.
but like that's after spending a lot of points and probably a lot of gold getting magic items that gives you bonuses to crafting. And
this
stuff
is
like
after
that.
probably investing like 10% of your character into doing this.
Right. Yeah.
All for something that is probably going to save you. I mean, in these cases, it's probably just going to save you maybe 100 gold over a couple levels. Who knows?
Right. Yeah.
So another thing that you can do to increase your check, that there isn't anything in the book saying you can't do this. So I'm pretty sure, because there's a lot of things you can't do. So I'm pretty sure that this would be perfectly legal, is having people help you.
Yeah.
Now, the way that aiding worked in this edition was not necessarily as good as it is in 5th edition, but essentially for each person helping you, they can make an aid check, which they just have to get a 10. If they succeed, they give you a +2 on your check. Mm-hmm. So if you've got, 5 people helping you, that's a +10 to every roll that you make.
Mm.
So, I mean, it's five more people's effort and time that they're putting in.
Right.
But if you need to get it done really fast, you can increase that DC by 10 and also get 5 people to help you. And now all of you are working on this thing and you're getting it done a lot faster.
Yeah.
So that is something that you can do to increase it as well.
A bow wasn't built in a day. Sorry.
Good. Thank you, Jeff. Another thing that I'm not entirely sure anybody would ever want to do this, but if you wanted to, you could make your checks day by day instead of by week. Mm-hmm. However, in that case, you're going by copper pieces rather than silver pieces, which I feel like is awful unless you're in Faerun, which 3rd edition was not in Faerun by default. Faerun has 10-day weeks. So in that case, a day would be 1/10 of a week. But unless I'm mistaken, Greyhawk was just a 7-day week.
Right. Maybe is that the reason why Faerun has a 10-day week? Is that the reason
Let's
why?
hope so. We've just uncovered it.
We cracked it.
And so, I mean, I guess if you're trying to make something that only costs a copper to begin with, you don't want to be like, well, I spent a week making this candle. Thanks, guys. But then in that case, why are you freaking making it? Just buy the thing. It's a freaking copper piece.
Yeah, like you're an adventurer. You're making hundreds, if not thousands of gold. Like,
no. I gotta say, I don't want to spend more money than I have to.
yeah. like I always like the idea of crafting things in like D&D and stuff. Like but it's just you just buy it.
Yeah.
You're one of the richest people in the world at this point. Just by being an adventurer. Like it is high risk, high reward being an adventurer. But like, dang those rewards, man! Like
Right.
that's like you find one dragon's hoard and you're set.
Exactly.
Sorry, it's just, and they're so easy to find.
Yeah, I'm finding them weekly.
So another thing to mention is that when you're crafting a masterwork item, back in 3rd edition, masterwork was an important thing.
Right.
On weapons or armor, you had to have a masterwork version before you could make it magical.
Right.
For a weapon, being masterwork gave you a bonus to your attack roll that then got overridden when it became magical. Armor, it reduced the armor check penalty. But when you were making, so a masterwork weapon was 300 gold plus whatever the base cost, and then masterwork armor was 150 plus the base cost. Just one note, when you are making a masterwork item, you treat the masterwork property as if it was a separate item for purposes of doing these calculations. So let's say I am making that bow. It's a DC 12, 75 gold. I would make that DC 12 until over and over until I reach the 75 gold. And then I would mechanically, I would then start doing the masterwork portion. Masterwork having its own DC. Masterwork is always 15, regardless of what it is you're making.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would keep going until that 300 gold on the bow, the masterwork bow, was done. So 375 gold altogether. However, one portion of it, the 300 gold portion of it, has a different calculation than the 75 gold portion.
Sure.
And then same thing with armor and so on. You can also repair an item in the same way as crafting it, but the cost is 1/5 of the original market cost. So if I'm repairing a bow, the DC is the same, but I would spend 15 gold instead of the 25 that I would spend to craft it.
In 3rd edition, was there ways to like could magical items be damaged?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Because like I know there were ways for magical items to be destroyed.
Yeah,
but I don't know if there was like oh your magical item is damaged, you need to get it repaired. Wouldn't it be neat if like you used that was the way to use those skills was repairing your stuff?
I don't think so. And if there was a way for magic items to get damaged, then repairing them would follow the magic item crafting rules rather than the non-magical crafting rules. So the crafting rules, as you can see, are very detailed and also awful for a couple reasons. There are items that you might want to craft that are ridiculously expensive. The first thing that always comes to mind is plate mail.
Yeah. Like full plate.
Like, sure, plate mail should be a big undertaking. And I think it's important to note that it is most definitely the work of several people rather than just one person hammering away at a piece of metal. But even still, full plate was 1,500 gold in 3rd edition.
So yeah, that's 15,000 silver.
15,000 silver.
Yeah, and what would be the DC for it? Let's say 18.
Yeah, I think it's something like that. 18. So Jeff's doing some math here since apparently my math wasn't good enough. It wasn't.
So okay.
Well, so like, let's say you exactly made the DC every time.
Right. So that's 324 silver. And what was it? 15,000 divided by 324. 46 weeks.
46 weeks.
And some change.
To make full plate.
47 weeks. How many weeks in a year?
52. So
52.
Almost a year. Okay. To be honest, that's actually lower, but I think the DC is actually probably lower than 18.
Sure.
But let's say somehow you increased it to 18. You're good enough that you're like, I'm going to do this a little bit faster.
Yeah.
And even still, that is almost a year to make a suit of armor.
Now, does it specify how much time you're spending every day? Like, is this specifically in downtime, or is it like you have to be spending so many hours a day doing this? Like, can you be adventuring and working on a suit of armor?
I don't think the player's handbook delves into it. It's been a long time since I've read like all of it, so I don't recall exactly. But I do know that in one of the later books, says that it is assumed that that is an 8-hour workday.
Yeah.
I suppose in theory you could do that while adventuring, but then are you bringing all of your adventuring? Are you bringing all of your smithing gear and all the pieces you're working on with you?
Right.
So the answer is no. You're not bringing, you're probably not bringing all of your stuff with you. unless you're a very high level. If you're a high enough level to have a portable hole, some sort of special extra dimensional whatever the heck, you're probably able to craft it faster too, I guess is the point I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, there's got to be a better way.
There's got to be a better way. So the reason that I say that I'm pretty sure one of the later books specified that it was an 8-hour day is because when the Warforged came out, and unless I'm mistaken, they don't suffer fatigue.
Right.
They were explicitly able to craft 3 times as fast because they could just keep working.
Warforged are like, the best. So yeah, that adds up. Yep. Checks out.
Anyway, so another thing, okay, because you can say, sure, full plate, I can understand it taking almost a year because that's a lot of pieces.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff. It requires a lot of skill. It's got to be fitted to the person. Blah blah blah. Whatever.
Yeah, no, like I've seen the work of like cosplayers and stuff like that, and it takes them years to make a full outfit if it's very detailed.
But that's only the stuff right in the player's handbook that is noteworthy. And I say there are other things that skew the system a lot more. Poisons.
Oh.
Poisons follow the exact same rules as any other craft, but poisons typically cost hundreds or thousands of gold per dose.
Ooh.
So you end up with certain poisons requiring like years to make basically like a little tiny packet of something that you are going to attack with once. One save is going to be made against it, and then it is gone.
That's actually kind of really cool.
Yeah,
like it feels cool because I guess it depends on like what those poisons do. Like, if the really
damage, whatever the heck.
If the really expensive one is really good, like it does something really nasty, like if it's from the Book of Vile Darkness or something like that, like spending years on this one potion, and you're like you got to find like all the right material components and stuff like that, and you search like across the world for the right pieces.
Yeah.
And it takes you that long to make it. And it's like, yes, and I've designed this poison to kill a monarch or something,
Sure. And that's cool. But again, that is for one dose.
Sure.
If they then want to have a second dose, that is another several years.
Oops, I spilled it. Or, he made the save.
Right. And you could say, oh, well, maybe those are only meant to be made by wizards with Fabricate. Okay. I can understand that, but the crafts that specifically get craft poison making are like the assassin. The assassin isn't going to be cast in Fabricate. I think the assumption is that they're like making poisons in between jobs and so on because they're going to kill this person. But like, again, if you were an assassin and I came to you and I was like, okay, I'm going to pay you to kill this monarch, use whatever poisons you have to use to kill him, and you're like, awesome, give me 3 years. I'm going to be like, no, I'm going to go find a different assassin.
In 3 years, he's up for re-election anyway, so
I guess
I'll just run for king.
Sure. And hey, assassin's advocate here. Let's say you already had the poison on hand. and then you use it, and of course you charge them for the poison that you just used.
Uh-huh.
And then someone else is like, I heard you took down old Congressman McCluskey or whatever. I want you to also kill this other person. You'd be like, okay, give me 3 years. Then they're going to be like, oh, no, I'm going to go find somebody else. So
no,
I just think that because of how the crafting system works, also how the gold piece system works in regards to like things being so expensive, you could retire for your entire life instead of buying this whatever.
Right, yeah.
It really kind of breaks down. Like, again, poisons are kind of an outlier because they are so expensive. A lot of the stuff you're going to be crafting is not thousands of gold. Full plate really is like the big example of the thing in the player's handbook that is broken. But there's alchemical stuff too. And again, they follow the same rules. And sometimes those can get expensive.
I feel like it works for like the game, like the NPC economy, but not for the player economy.
Sure.
So like spending a year making this one suit of armor that you're going to sell for, you're going to make a profit of 1,000 gold.
Yeah.
1,000 gold a year. That's a good salary, I feel like, for an NPC,
Oh, yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Because what is it's like a modest lifestyle fee or something.
In 3rd edition, which is what we're talking about,
right.
a non-skilled laborer made 1 silver piece a day.
Yeah.
So about 30 gold a year.
Right.
So 1,000 gold for a non-skilled person is that's a fortune.
Yeah, for sure.
For a skilled person, they don't really say, it kind of varies depending on what it is. But you could say 10 times, 300 gold is probably a reasonable amount for a year's salary for like a skilled worker. 1,000 is still several years' wages.
Yeah. So
that is a big deal.
So like it kind of makes sense that like this is somebody who's trained themselves to become a blacksmith and has taken a year to make this really nice suit of armor because it's plate mail.
Right.
And they sell it to an adventurer or like a knight or like a royal knight or something like that, and they make 1,000 gold. They're good.
Yeah.
It's like the freaking crab fishermen. They're basically like going out there for months in the crazy waters and like almost dying in some cases, but they come back and they make like an entire year's worth of like a 6-figure salary.
Sure.
In the matter of like a few months.
Yeah.
Because it's a tough job. So it's like, you're doing all this work to make more money than you would have doing a normal thing. Mm-hmm. So like it makes sense for the NPCs to do it because like that's a good way to make a living. For a PC to do it, you're already making a living by being an adventurer. You just pay the NPC who's crafting it for you.
Sure. Anyway, so I mean we can be done talking about 3rd edition non-magical crafting. Just it is a very complicated system and very kind of broken in a lot of ways. It's very easy to break again because you can really whore out your skills in that edition.
Right.
But I think that it's important to see where it started and then where it goes.
Yeah.
When you were saying if you were to whore out your character to exploit the skill system,
right?
That for me always falls into the category of because it's fun ? Like how are you? What kind of player are you? That your idea of fun is exploiting the system like crazy.
That's true.
Are you just prepping prepping you're talking about magical items in the way that you've exploited the system because it's fun ?
No, when someone like me creates a bunch of magical items and exploits the system, it's wonderful. It's glorious.
It was wonderful and glorious. I agree.
But using the non-magical system, you have to. I'd love to hear a profile of someone who was able to use the crafting system in 3.5 for non-magical items to do anything worthwhile.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that would be.
I don't know.
Roll better.
Sure.
Make better characters.
Okay.
Save your money up and buy things at wholesale price.
Yeah.
Like,
Step up your crafting game, people. Come on.
crafting game? I don't know. I don't see.
You don't see the purpose, is what you're
I
saying.
do not see the purpose of it.
Okay.
I can't imagine the person. I can understand the want of having crafted something yourself. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, I cannot imagine how this was fun. There was no Netflix, and everybody only owned like 2 games.
Sure.
There was an element of, yes, let's take all weekend with spreadsheets and figure out the value of this in silver pieces. Is the only way I can conceive this having been fun.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. So, I don't know. I think that the 3rd edition crafting system was way more complicated than it needed to be. Mm-hmm. And as we'll get to in just a moment, I think that Wizards of the Coast agreed.
Sure.
So I'm going to segue from talking about the 3rd edition non-magical crafting system to the 4th edition non-magical crafting system.
Okay.
There wasn't one. Non-magical crafting was deemed not heroic. Therefore, it was not on the character sheet. You did not have to spend any resources like character resources to do it.
Right.
I guess it's up to the DM to determine if they want the players to make some sort of a check to do it. It's up to the DM to determine what that does, but it was pretty much just you buy it and then you say that you made it. You know, like you, the player, deduct the gold. Story-wise, your character made it rather than bought it.
Right. You're not saving any money. You're not...
Correct.
You're just
Correct.
giving it the flavor, I made this.
Pretty much,
I made this.
Yeah, so that was 4th edition.
Okay.
Very, like, there was not even bare bones because there was nothing there. There's no bones. just an empty room. So Jeff, you would like to talk about 5th edition's crafting system.
So 5th edition crafting, it's like, it seems it's somewhat similar, but a lot simpler.
Yeah.
So the idea is like you need the tools involved. Mm-hmm. So you need proficiency with the proper tools that you have, or actually, see, like, and this kind of goes into tools in 5th edition, which is a little confusing because they're not.
Yeah.
There's no, like, they don't really spell out tools very well. Tools is just sort of they take the place, like any skill, anything that would be a skill, but you would need tools in order to do it. That's what the tools are for.
Pretty much, yeah.
So tools are basically their own set of, like, they're like a secondary set of skills. They just involve having a proficiency and a set of tools, and then you have to have the tools.
Sure.
And then you're making a check and adding the proficiency of the tool. You're not using like a skill proficiency.
Right.
You're using a tool proficiency. It's not much. So I'll just read it off. Mm-hmm. Okay. It says, you can craft non-magical objects, including adventuring equipment and works of art. You must be proficient with the tools related to the object that you're trying to create, typically artisan's tools, and you might also need access to special materials or locations necessary to create it. For example, someone proficient with smith's tools needs a forge in order to craft a sword or a suit of armor.
Yeah.
So you can't, I mean, like, there might be some magical ways to carry around a forge with you, but like in most cases, you're going to have to stop in town and ask the local blacksmith if he can use his forge or something.
Yeah.
Or build one yourself, I guess, which would take the time.
Yeah.
So, for every day of downtime you spend crafting, you craft one or more items with a total market value not exceeding 5 GP. Okay. So, in a day, you can make 5 GP.
It's not bad.
Worth of items.
Also, I think a lot of things are less expensive than they were in.
That's true.
3rd edition.
Yeah. So like stuff, so some stuff isn't going to take super long. And you must expend raw materials worth half the total market value.
Sure.
So instead of a third, it's a half. But but again, you're doing 5 GP a day rather than like so many silver a week.
Yeah, yeah.
If something you want to craft has a greater market value than 5 GP, you make progress every day in 5 GP increments until you reach the market value of that item. So plate armor is market value of 1,500. It takes 300 days to craft by yourself.
Okay.
So that's not too far off of.
Kind of time wise, it is kind of similar.
Yeah. So it also says, and likewise, you can have multiple people.
Yeah.
So you have people helping you out. And in this way, you're not using like the aid of, it's not like an aid or you're not gaining advantage or anything like that.
They're just using their downtime.
Right.
As well.
So they're adding their 5 GP increments to that. So if you have 2 people crafting, as long as you have the same proficiencies and everything,
yeah,
you're going to cut that time in half. So yeah, it's like, multiple characters can combine their efforts toward crafting a single item, provided that the characters all have proficiencies with the required tools and are working together in the same place. Each player contributes 5 GP worth of effort every day spent helping to craft the item. So yeah, three characters can craft a plate mail in 100 days.
Yeah.
It says, while crafting, you maintain a modest lifestyle without having to pay the 1 GP per day. So it's kind of like, it's like you're spending, it's like you're doing 6 GP a day worth of work, but 1 GP is being spent towards your living.
Yeah, I kind of picture that like you're working on this making this sword, and every now and then someone pops their head in and they're like, "Hey, can you fix this? Like, can you fix this stirrup for me?" And you're like, "Yeah, sure, just toss it on the thing."
Right.
Bam, bam, bam.
Yeah, my force threw a shoe, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay, yeah, sure." So, and that's basically it.
Okay.
That's it. Like, it's very simple. It's like 5 GP a day. It does not specify in here how much time you're spending per day.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
However, when we get to magical items, it's in the Dungeon Master's Guide. When it comes to magical items, it says specifically 8 hours.
Okay.
I would imagine it's the same for this.
It probably, yeah.
I would imagine.
There might be something just in like the beginning of the downtime activities section that's like, oh, downtime activities are expected to take blah, 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 blah.
Oh, that's very true, yeah.
Okay, so I think we've pretty much covered the non-magical side of crafting in 3rd edition, 4th edition, and 5th edition. So now we're going to take a moment and we're going to talk about magic item crafting. It's similar in some ways to non-magical item crafting, but not exactly the same. So to start us off with 3rd edition magic item crafting, we have Steve here.
Hello.
So Steve's going to give some of his input, some personal experience with magic item crafting, and I've got some notes and stuff too. So if there's anything that you miss, I'll be there at the ready. So Steve, how would you explain 3rd edition magic item crafting?
It's great.
Okay, thank you so much, Steve.
I would describe it as ripe for exploitation.
Okay.
In a very, very fun way.
Sure.
That I really, really hope did not detract from the experience of the other players. Because I was too young to be thinking about, this is kind of antisocial. I sure do have 3 times the amount of equipment as everyone else.
Yeah. I don't know. I've played characters in 3rd edition that were all about magic item crafting, and I don't know. I kind of see what you're saying, but like I never got any complaints. I mean, I always made sure to like help out the rest of the party get equipment too. So yeah, I hope it was never a problem. In my experience playing with you as a player, I don't think it was ever a problem.
I hope so.
So I'll briefly talk about how it worked mechanically. The first thing that you would need as to craft magic items in 3rd edition are the feats. There were a whole bunch of different feats, and you needed basically all of them to be able to craft all the magic items. The feats were craft magic arms and armor, craft wondrous item, craft rod, forge ring, craft wand, craft construct, brew potion, and scribe scroll. Unless I'm missing any of those, I think that was all of them. I hope that was all of them. And I guess that's not counting psionics, because there were psionic versions of those feats as well. And each of those have caster level prerequisites, so you have to be caster, and then you take this feat or these many feats, after which point you can start making an item. Now, to make an item, you need access to all of the spells involved in the spell. If you're in the item rather. If you're just trying to make like a +1 weapon, I don't think there were explicitly any spells required. I think the argument could be made that like the magic weapon spell or something might be required, but I don't think in the book that was explicit. So you need access to all the spells. If you're making like a wand of fireball, you need access to fireball. If you're making a bag of holding, you need access to Leomund's secret chest, I think is the spell that does basically what bag of holding does. There were certain spells that you needed access to. You don't have to be able to cast them yourself, but if you aren't able to cast them yourself, you need someone there that can, or you need access from like a scroll or something. Now, if you're getting it from a scroll or someone else is going to be with you, you need 1 casting of it per day of the creation, if I'm not mistaken. So if we'll get to creation in a second, but if the item is going to take 10 days to cast or 10 days to create, you're going to need 10 scrolls of that spell, or a person that can be with you for every day of those 10 days. Certain classes like the Warlock and Artificer got abilities that let them emulate certain spells by making a successful use magic device check. So if you're an Artificer, you don't need to have the spell. You can basically fake being able to cast the spell, which I think was a neat mechanic. It's also worth noting that the Artificer specifically gained almost all of the craft feats, if not all of them. I think Wizards got a few for free. They got Scribe Scroll for free. Every 5 levels, I think they could choose one more, or they could choose a meta magic feat. I don't think Warlocks got any specifically, but they could take them as normal. In a magic item's description in the DMG has a lot of data that you're going to need for doing all of this, one of which is the market cost. You're going to need that for some of the stuff I'm going to say in a second. Also, every item had a caster level listed in its item description, this has been errataed and then counter errataed several times. That is not a prerequisite for creating the item. Many times they would say, yes, this is a prerequisite for making the item. And then they would almost immediately come out and say, no, that's not a prerequisite. Because if it's a prerequisite, that means that certain items like Universal Solvent has a 20th level caster level on it. It's like a 50 GP item. Why do you have to be level 20 to create a 50 GP item? And not only that, but like, I don't think there's a single ring that, I mean, there are many, many rings that have a caster level of much lower than the caster level prerequisite of Forge Ring. Because Forge Ring, I want to say, had like a very high level prerequisite, but there were rings that were like caster level 1, caster level 2. So caster level was not a prerequisite. It was just if you found an item in the wild and somebody tried to like dispel it or counter it or something, that's the caster level that it is going off of. So like if something was based off caster level, you'd go off the caster level of the item, not necessarily the caster level of the person who made it or the person who is using it. Anyway, so I just had to say that, like, caster level was not a prerequisite, even though many sources in 3rd edition said that it was. Anyway, as long as you have as long as you have the minimum caster level of all of the prerequisite spells and such, you can make the item. And it is assumed that whenever you make an item, it is going to be at the minimum caster level of all of the spells required. So let's say you're making a wand, or let's say you're making a wand of fireball. A wand of fireball can be cast at a minimum caster level of 5. So generally speaking, when you find a wand of fireball, it's going to be level 5. Because if it was a higher level, it would do more damage in 3rd edition. So it's very important to know, well, even if you're a 7th level caster and you made a wand of fireball, it's not going to be a 7th level wand. It's going to be a 5th level wand. Because if it's a 7th level wand, you have to pay extra because that is a more powerful item. So as long as you have the minimum caster level for each of the spells required, you can make the item. You then look at the market cost. The market cost that's in the Dungeon Master's Guide. You then use that to determine the amount of time, the amount of gold, and the amount of experience it's going to take to make it. A magic item costs, it takes 1 day per 1,000 GP in the base cost. So if there's a magic item that costs 10,000 gold, it's going to take 10 days. Even though you're not spending 10,000 gold, it takes 10 days. If it's less than 1,000 gold, it still takes 1 day. 1 day minimum for all magic items, even scrolls that might be like 25 gold or something. Still takes a day, technically speaking. So you spend 1 day per 1,000 GP. You spend half of the base cost in gold. So if it costs 10,000, you spend 5,000. It then costs experience equal to 1/25th or 4% of the market cost. So that 10,000 gold magic item that you're making costs 400 experience to make. So again, 10,000 gold costs you 5,000 gold, 400 experience, and 10 days. During that time, I believe it is assumed that you are spending 8 hours a day doing this. You can't engage in any sort of like heavy activity like combat or anything like that. It's also worth noting that anytime a spell required for the magic item has a costly material component or XP component in the base spells, you must provide that costly material component and XP component for every day that you are creating the item. So like if you're making a wand of, I don't know, wish or something, you can't make a wand of wish, but if you could make a wand of wish, you would have to essentially cast wish however many times, for 1 time for each day of the casting. That was a real bad example. Sorry, everybody. So there's also a lot of guidelines for creating your own magic items. I won't necessarily get into those. I'm not sure if Steve wants to get into those or not. It looks like he does. But there were a lot of rules to making magic items in 3rd edition. It costs this much and so on. When I had characters, I would make them for party members at a reduced cost to them, but I would still make myself a profit because I'm spending experience, and experience is a very valuable resource. So I'm not giving it to them wholesale because that means I'm losing out experience. I am still making money off it, but I would charge party members still less than they would get it from a store so that they're getting a discount. I'm getting the excess money that they are giving me, but I'm also spending experience for it. Also, we're noting there were feats that let you decrease the time, the gold, and the XP costs of crafting magic items. So Again, it's also worth noting that the Artificer, specifically the Eberron class, got not only a pool of experience that was meant just for crafting magic items, so like for a little while every level you could spend that instead of your own experience, but also they had the ability to disenchant magic items to basically get the experience back from one item and then use that experience to make another item. So there were a lot of ways to like manipulate the mechanics a little bit, but even still there were a lot of rules. So that's pretty much, in a nutshell, that's how crafting magic items worked.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't remember the time component.
We might have glossed over that.
Yeah, I definitely remember spending hundreds of thousands of gold on my equipment, which would have equated to hundreds of days.
Yeah, that was during the Age of Worms campaign, so I probably hand-waved the time requirement.
The time requirement is probably an important component.
Probably.
in retrospect.
Probably.
If not the time requirement, something else.
Sure.
I feel like in the more than decade since we played that, because Minecraft came out, so many games have durability for their pieces of equipment. So many games have a crafting system that's much more robust. The contemporary to when we played Age of Worms was Kingdom Hearts. There was like the synthesis, build a keyblade out of these weird random components.
Yeah.
That was the height of crafting at the time. So now it's not uncommon for there to be something that's from Dark Souls Titanite equivalent.
Sure.
If you want to build a thing from scratch, or if you or in a boss soul, if you're going to build it from scratch, or there's usually some sort of limited item that says you can do crafting, but you can do it this many times right now.
Yeah.
As an alternative to the time component, because basically I was allowed to make everything I wanted, and I made, and there were a lot of slots for equipment in 3.5.
Yeah, because like every magic item took up some sort of real estate on your, or a lot of magic items rather, took up some sort of real estate on your body. You have a certain number of slots, 2 rings, 1 armor or robe, 1 helmet or headband, 1 belt, 1 pair of gloves, 1 pair of boots. So yeah, when you're designing your own magic items, there were rules on like what slot it took up. There were rules on if you wanted it to not take a slot, it was cost double. If you wanted to just put an ability onto an item that already existed, it didn't cost double because it was being added to the same thing. So like if someone destroyed your headband and your headband had like 3 different items worth of stuff on it, it was still only 1 item that had to be destroyed. So it was 1.5 times to add abilities onto an existing item.
Those came out really cool.
Yeah.
Stacking multiple abilities onto the same item. By the end of Age of Worms, a number of pieces of equipment started to feel a lot like artifacts.
Yes. Yeah, I love thinking back to your character in Age of Worms because your items did feel so distinct. You had a shield that was made of dragon scales that could turn into a cat.
Well, a tiny dragon with the size of a cat with the mannerisms of a cat.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking of. And like, so that had its own personality, and then like
I think it was a floating shield too. I think that's
it was an animated shield. You had armor that could change itself to look like clothes. That like, I think whenever someone hit you, there was a chance that they took fire damage.
I don't remember that part, but what I do remember is when I turned into a tuxedo, there was like a red stripe. So that very well could have been.
Yeah. And I think someone like attacked you and like the fire like shot off or something.
Yeah, that's that's entirely possible. I forgot that component. Do you remember that it was an iron golem?
It was. It was
a tiny iron golem.
I had you fight a tiny iron golem because you wanted full plate, but you didn't want to just buy full plate because that's not interesting. So I had you fight basically. I was going to have you fight like an animated suit of armor and you were going to get the armor, but I decided to make it look like the Iron Golem in the 3rd edition Monster Manual because the Iron Golem looks so cool.
It was great. And then because most of my items ended up being intelligent eventually, which is one of the reasons why the shield could turn itself into something. Right, it was one of my 3 intelligent magic items. The Iron Golem suit of armor was able to turn itself back into an Iron Golem.
Sure.
And I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was the one making the magic items in the night. Like I think the way we had it flavor texted was that it was the Elves and the Shoemaker because my character was too dumb to know what he was doing.
Okay. I do remember when you wanted an adamantine axe and you liked your axe. You didn't want to like sell your axe and get an adamantine one. So I rationalized it as your character went to somebody and was like, I want you to make my axe better. And you handed them a bunch of gold. And they were like, okay, I don't know what to do with this. So they set your axe down on a pile of adamantine, like a big stack of ingots. And then they came back and it had eaten a chunk of adamantine. And now the blade I had drawn like runes on the blade, and the blade were like, it was like a face with like it was like sticking its tongue out. And now it had like a milk mustache or like a spaghetti sauce beard of adamantine on the edge of the blade.
I also remember when it was time for it to get its turn into a dragon mode.
Yes, I eventually made it turn into a dragon because it ate the head of a platinum dragon.
Yeah, somebody had he had a platinum dragon head in his collection.
I'm pretty sure. Go back and listen to the older episodes. I'm pretty sure we've mentioned this probably 3 or 4 times. I draw from this campaign quite a bit on this podcast.
Yeah, we have a sound effect for it.
We do. I probably used the sound effect like 7 or 8 times by now.
He was giving out items to the two of them, and then when my axe ate the dragon head,
because his axe ate stuff,
right?
That was like a given property, like an understood property by that point,
right? So when it ate the dragon head, which was it getting the ability, he said, "Okay, you get nothing."
Yeah. So, like designing your own magic items is something that there are a lot of rules for it in the 3rd edition Dungeon Master's Guide. They are guidelines more than anything else because as you learn, like there's a lot of stuff you can do with it to become very, very, very powerful. And so, of course, it's recommended that DMs follow those guidelines only as far as they feel is necessary, and be sure of know your party when you're letting them do stuff like that. It was a very, very big system and very open in a lot of regards. And so of course people are going to find ways to break it, that just happens. But I think that, a DM that has a pretty good handle on the campaign and the group, I think can keep it from becoming a problem fairly easily.
I think it also is important if you go in with the right headspace.
Sure.
It's much harder to break the game if high on your priority list is not breaking the game.
Sure.
And if the reason it's high on your priority list is, I would like this to be fun for my friends.
Yeah.
That's something that I wish was higher on my priority list at the time. I hope it wasn't a big deal, but certainly anytime it would have been a big deal, it would have been because I wanted to be cool.
Yeah.
I wanted to be cooler. I wouldn't mind being the coolest. And that's not what D&D is about.
Sure.
It's important to have everybody get a chance to have their moment, but this wasn't that. This was, all right, I found a way to have absolutely everything and never have to not be power attacking.
Right. Last week we talked about like how a player can deal with a power gamer. Like if you're a player and there's someone else in the group that is a power gamer, because we've talked about like what the DM can do, because the DM, is in a unique position to deal with stuff like that. So, and, there are a lot of people that do want to be the best, but that's not inherently a bad thing. People have fun in their own different ways. So as long as the rest of the group can find ways to enjoy being in a group, even if they're not the one doing the most damage or winning the most or whatever, there's no reason you can't have fun, even if there is a lot of this sort of stuff going on. And power gaming itself that's not a problem. Like there are problems that arise because of it, because of the people involved, but the power gaming itself is not the problem. People naturally want to be powerful. They want to have fun in this game that is basically one giant power fantasy. So don't discourage people from wanting to have all this cool stuff. Find a way to integrate it in such a way that everybody can have a good time.
I hope that the imagination that eventually went into the flavoring of the items helps mitigate that. I wasn't just a guy showing up in a beige shirt with really high stats. Sure.
Yeah, no, like I loved every time that you would like come up with a new personality for your character's whole thing was just so cool. Like I think you even thought of like what happens to your character after the campaign was over. And I love that. I love that you were that interested in your character to try and do all this cool stuff with your character and then also think about afterwards, you know.
It never came off that you were trying to overshadow anybody else. So, like, you know, so like...
Thank God.
Yeah, no, like, 'cause you were very creative with it, and all it did was add to the adventure. So, like, there was never a moment where I'm like, man... Dang it, Steve, for having a better, you know, because I was doing my own power fantasy. I was trying to make my character powerful in its own way. Gabe even helped me out because I did the silly thing of multi-classing and when I shouldn't have, or what, you know, it was. Oh.
Well, and you had such an experimental main class.
I mean, yeah.
I had a not experimental main class. One level of barbarian.
19 or more level. What level did we end that campaign at?
I feel like 21.
I think that was right. Yeah.
I was going to say, I wish I remembered exactly, because certainly I think I was a level or two behind because of all of the magic item making. I think I was at least a level behind.
I had two other characters that were like very big into crafting. That was Perth and Saythorn. And I think with Perth, I did end. I don't know if I was ever an entire level, but there was a point where at the end of one of like the big campaign boss fights, he said that we could each just like pick out a magic item of X amount of gold and we just have it. And I ended up saying I would like a scroll of wish, not because I want to use wish, but because a scroll of wish has like several thousand XP in it. And I need to use that instead of my own XP when crafting items. And so it's like I turned down a very powerful magic item just because it would set me back even further having to continue to make magic items.
For me.
For all of us. And to be fair, I got very burned out on all of the calculations in that campaign by the end because like I had the scribblings of a madman in my notebooks because I would have all these pages that were like, okay, the market cost is this much, cost this much I'm spending this much. Steve is giving me this much, which means I get this much profit and I'm spending this much experience and so many things that like I would have to go and every time a transaction was done, I would have to make a mental effort to go in and like hugely cross out every single calculation in that page so that I didn't look at it a week later and be like, oh crap, did I not account for this? So I went a little crazy in that, but it was all in the service of having fun and being powerful, you know.
Yeah, and we felt powerful in that one for sure.
Yeah.
I think towards the end. Because it was Eberron.
Yeah.
Nobody had magic.
Right.
Just us.
Well, everybody had very low level magic.
Yes.
We were the only high level magic. Yeah. So magic items, making custom magic items is like in 3rd edition. I guess we need to keep specifying this was 3rd edition because it's not this way anymore. But it was like the Wild West. There was like a whole lot of stuff to be done, but oh boy.
I could be wrong, but I think the legacy of 3.5 was putting weird crap together.
Okay.
Because there were so many prestige classes. It was very, very easy to multi-class. It was very easy to pick up a level of this, put that in there.
Yeah.
To grab feats from the many, 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 many resource books.
Sure.
You know, the one of the most excessive things was because Oriental Adventures had come out.
Oh, yeah.
The Wu Gen had a spell that would allow a Wu Gen to become colossal.
Yeah.
And Miracle allowed me to cast that
spell as a cleric in addition to all your cleric spells.
Right.
Yeah.
And so combining all this stuff was very, very exciting. Mm-hmm. It was exciting to put all of those combinations together and go, oh my God, look at what we did now.
It's like if a portal to a parallel universe opened up and the plastic block company Goleh dumped a whole bunch of Goleh blocks in here, and they're all different than Legos, but they're all compatible with Legos. And then it's like, oh man, let's see what we can build with this, you know.
And it felt very different from, you know, the Tolkien roots of fantasy.
Sure.
It didn't really feel like, okay, I am a this. 5th edition, granted, I've been at level 2 for over a year now, so that might really be hinting.
In our library games.
Might be shading the way I'm thinking about this. But it feels much more like I am a paladin.
Cool.
I'm not a paladin with 18 different bonuses on my various pieces of equipment.
Yeah.
I don't think about my equipment. I know that I have a shield because it's part of the way that the class is designed, the stance or whatever that I took.
Right.
It feels much more like I am playing this role. In 3.5 edition was much more like the Marvel Expanded Universe.
Yeah.
It was just, you can have that. We have that. Go ahead. Add it.
So yeah. So thank you, Steve, for coming and giving your thoughts on 3rd edition magic item crafting.
Thanks for having me.
So now that we've talked, pretty in depth, I think, about 3rd edition's magic item crafting, strap yourselves in for 4th edition magic item crafting.
Oh man,
there is none. I mean, you can do it. Basically, there's a feat called Ritual Caster that anybody can take, whether you're a caster or not. And then if you have it, you can cast rituals. One of those rituals was Enchant Magic Item, which lets you make magic items. However, there are no mechanics for doing so because there is no benefit to doing so. All that it means is that, I guess, if you're not at a market and you want a magic item, you can get it. Or maybe you could make a magic item that looks the way that you want instead of just finding one somewhere or buying one somewhere that looks like whatever. There's no mechanical benefit. You still you pay exactly as much money as if you were purchasing it, but story-wise, you made it instead of bought it.
What was the thing about, there was disenchantment in 4th edition?
There was, and then it was a separate ritual, disenchant magic item, that would break down the magic item into this stuff called residuum, which you could then use that as a reagent to make more magic items. So it wasn't a 1-for-1. Like if you found a +1 sword and you wanted a +1 dagger or something, I think there was actually a separate ritual that would let you transfer the +1 from the sword to the dagger. But if you disenchanted it, you'd break down the sword would be gone, and then you would have like a 1/5 of the money that had gone into it, which you could then put towards a new item.
Right.
So like if you would have to find a bunch of magic items to do it, but let's say this was an edition where every player had to have a whole bunch of magic items. You might find a whole bunch of magic items as treasure. You could break down 5 +1 swords and then make 1 +1 dagger.
Right.
Or whatever it is you're trying to make.
A +1 equivalent or something. Yeah.
Sure. So, I mean, the system was very, very simple. It was basically just a numbers game and then pretty much all just for flavor.
So going into 5th edition,
yeah,
magical item crafting, not too different from regular crafting.
Okay. Still a downtime activity.
Takes 8 hours. You have to be spending 8 hours a day. There are some prerequisites. So like you're going to need to know, you have to know the spell that it requires. So if you're making a wand of magic missile, you need to know magic missile. You also need to have a slot, and you have to use a slot every day that you're doing it. So similar to 3rd edition, like you have to be spending, you have to be casting that spell basically every day that you're putting into it. Now as far as like cost, as far as the cost of the spell, like you're not going off the cost of the specific item. You're going off of like it's based on, they have a chart basically. So like an uncommon item is 500 GP, and a rare is 5,000, very rare 50,000, and then 500,000 for a legendary item.
So compared to like earlier editions, very cheap.
Fairly cheap. It's like it does give the DM some options on to like adding some more requirements. So in the Dungeon Master's Guide, it says that the magic items are the DM's purview, so you decide how they fall into the party's possession. As an option, you can allow your players to craft them. Yeah. Creation, it's lengthy and expensive. It says that the character must have the formula that describes the construction of the item. So the idea is that like you can't just like, well, I'm just gonna come up with a magic. I'm gonna come up with this magic item that's in the book. Sure. Like the DM basically has to like, it's giving the DM the option to say like, no, you need to like learn how to make this thing. Okay. Like like you need to find the plans in some mad wizard's lab or something like that. You have to go on a quest to find, the ancient runes that describe the crafting process of this legendary item or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah. So similar to crafting normal items, it's you do it in increments per day. So a uncommon item takes 500 GP is going to be 500 GP worth of work.
Yeah.
But with magical items, you're doing 25 GP increments.
Okay, because they're not as expensive as they weren't like several thousand for even the most basic thing, but they are more expensive than non-magical stuff in 5th edition.
Plus, it sort of adds in like the requirements for doing so are going to be like you need to be able to be like there's a certain there's a minimum level you have to be in order to craft these things. So like uncommon, you have to be 3rd level.
Oh, I see.
And then it's 6th, 11th, and 17th for a legendary.
Sure.
So you have to be a minimum level, and then you have to know the spells involved, and then you have to go. You have the plans, and the DM can again like make it so like in order to craft this like ice sword, you have to do so on the top of a mountain or something.
Oh, I like
that.
You
can put some extra like requirements for making these magical items. Like, it's like, or, if you're making a wand of fireball, you have to be nearby a source of fire or you have to be near a volcano or something like that, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. In fact, when we get to the second half of this question, finally, that's going to play a role in it. So go on.
Right. Yeah. And then again, multiple characters can combine their efforts as long as they, again, match the same requirements.
Yeah.
Which isn't super likely that, like depending on how the party is built out, that like, you're not going to have multiple people who know the exact same spell and have the, all the requirements and everything like that. But if you do, you can cut your time in half or however many people there are. I think there's not really too much difference other than that. Like there's just the added requirements of knowing the spell, and then there's the set GP cost depending on the rarity of the item.
Sure. And is that a cost to buy or to make or both? Because
it's just that's the creation cost. That's the creation cost, but you're spending that in 25 GP increments.
Okay. And well, because Xanathar's does have a magic item crafting time. So listeners, I just flipped open Xanathar's guide and Jeff was going off the DMG. I think Xanathar's guide has like alternate amounts for all of these things.
Oh, sure.
Like there's
because in DMG it does say that you can like decide, like the DM can decide on a different GP amount that suits the campaign. So like if it's a like low treasure campaign or something like that, I guess. Like if you're not like if your players aren't stumbling up upon a dragon's hoard every week, they might not be making this much amount of gold. So you could kind of dial it down a little bit.
Yeah. So so again, just Jeff was going off the Dungeon Master's guide, and Xanathar's may have different numbers, but use whichever one you wish. I mean, I'm sure the general rules are the same.
It also does mention for like spell components. Like you still like if the spell that you're using to make the item has spell components, you're basically using those spell components every day.
Yeah.
So if there has a cost, so if you're making like a wand of raised dead,
ooh, okay.
It might be costing you and it for every day that you're doing it, I think you have to spend the 500 gold or whatever for the diamond. So like that could be pretty costly, but then you have an item
that you have a wand of raised dead at that point.
Wand of raised dead, which I must, I'm assuming isn't going to, you're not required to have the diamond at that point. So
when, back when I was playing as Ichi, we came across a very, very large sum of money late in the campaign, and I did, using the guidelines in the 3.5 DMG, I did stat out an item that let me cast Limited Wish at will, incorporating the increased cost for an item that has an XP cost, because Limited Wish had an XP cost. Even including that, I still had enough money for this ridiculously powerful item. And I showed it to my DM, and long story short, he said no. Which I do not blame him for one bit, because it basically would have let me cast any 5th level spell or lower at will. Just all the time.
Oh, man.
As a barbarian.
As
well as many, many other things that were much more powerful than that.
Sure.
So anyway, I don't blame him for vetoing that. But yes, components like that are indeed a component of designing stuff like that.
Right.
So that was magic item crafting in
Right.
5th edition. So now the second half of this question, I don't think this will take very long. That all took much longer than I was expecting.
This is a
I thought
double
we would
episode.
maybe have time for a second episode, for a second question, but
no.
that's fine.
Well, okay. So here's the thing.
Yeah.
So the second half of the question is, what does a DM do to make crafting a more viable option?
Yeah.
The first half of the question I do want to address, though, is saying that the 5th edition crafting rules are absurd. Now,
I don't think the 5th edition rules are that absurd, though.
well, so if they think it's absurd, in which direction do they think it's absurd?
Sure.
Do they think it's too powerful? Do they think it's too
complicated.
Too complicated? Do they think
Not
it's too simple?
complicated enough.
Yeah. Do you think it's too easy to make items or too hard to make items? Is it not like? I mean, he's asking a viable option. Like, so obviously it's like, okay, he doesn't. He's saying that it's not a viable. It's not a viable. Rule set. It really depends on what the players are trying to achieve by crafting. Are they trying to be a character who is a blacksmith and that's what they want to do? Do they want to be the guy making items? And in that sort of case, like, just let them do it.
Yeah.
Just let them do it. Like, it doesn't even take any extra time. Like, certain races don't need to sleep. Certain races only need a certain amount of sleep, like less sleep. And like even humans could live off of 6 hours sleep normally. So like but you need 8 hours, for a full rest.
Sure. And they even errated what a long rest meant a while back that kind of screwed the whole thing up. But I totally agree.
Yeah. So like 2 hours you could be spending, hammering away at a thing. And so if you want to be the blacksmith. Let them be the blacksmith.
Yeah.
The other thing is like they could be just trying to get magical items cheaper.
Sure.
And that you could also do that, but there does have to be a time cost or some sort of commitment.
Sure.
The game is all about going on adventures and stuff like that. So make the crafting an adventure.
Exactly. You're saying exactly what I was going to say. Go on.
So in the 5th edition the book, it mentions like they got to have the plans for it. They might need to be in a certain location. Like, go with that.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not sure if they're saying specifically mundane crafting.
Yeah.
Or not. The only problem I see with just letting a blacksmith be a blacksmith is like pumping out full plate. Like maybe that needs more time to do that, I guess. But
I guess I don't know.
I don't know if you'll use the earlier segment where I was trying to talk about someone who wants to exploit the 3.5 edition. I have a better understanding of what I was trying to explain before.
Okay.
It might not be easy to discern this for everybody,
Sure.
but check if the player is trying to cheat or if the player is trying to do something cool.
Okay.
It might be a combination of both. If a player is not trying to cheat, know that they're not trying to cheat.
Okay.
That if they're trying to use the crafting systems to do something cool, that's cool.
Yeah.
They're adding to the story. They're adding to the flavor. They're engaged.
Yeah. Don't ever punish a player for using the rules, for using the game.
And if they're not trying to cheat, don't overthink it.
Sure.
it really depends, because like I feel like there could be some players that are like crafty in the way that they cheat.
Sure.
So like they could be
crafty like tricky, and
Right.
not crafty like they're building things.
right. Yeah. Like like they are so want to cheat that they find ways to trick the DM into thinking like, oh, they're no, I just think this is a cool thing, but really they're trying to cheese the system or something like that.
Sure.
If it's the players want access to cheaper magic items or something like that, make it so it's cheaper, but have it be a trade-off of they have to go on this quest, or they have to, you have to do these skill checks or something like that. Like it doesn't need to be necessarily like the crafting skill checks or whatever. Like if it's not the act of crafting that interests them, but the just cheaper items that interest them.
Sure.
There has to be some sort of trade-off, and like you could do that in other ways other than the crafting rules. whatever you like doing as a DM, make them do that. Make them go on that adventure to find that item, and then or they use a knowledge check to know where an item of that kind might be. So like you play off of the player's strengths to obtain this item in a different way other than just buying it.
Sure.
There was an idea I had at one point where like give the players access to a crafter, some sort of like you basically have like an NPC that the players can go to on a regular basis and craft items for them. And if they want a specific thing, they have to go out and find. Let's say they want to craft a wand of fireball.
Sure.
Let's just say that. Okay, so then they have to, they have to find like a monster or something like that has some sort of fire element to it.
Sure.
And bring back its head or it's one of its organs, like its fire producing organ or something like that. You're gonna right. Mm-hmm. So you're gonna find a piece of a monster. So you fight like a young red dragon and rip out its heart or something, and you take that to the crafting guy, and he is able to use his magic forge or whatever to turn it into this wand of fireballs or a flaming sword or something like that. So like if the players don't mind not being the one who crafted it, but they want to be part of the crafting process, like, have them go on an adventure and, find the materials or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, no, that's you said everything I was going to say. I don't think there is a problem with the system as it is, but if you want it to be better or just more interesting, make getting the ingredients quest.
Yeah.
And then you as the DM they can't run away with the game because they can't do things that you haven't given them the materials for. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you're letting them have a more active part in making all of the cool stuff.
Yeah.
I was thinking you might want to reflect on building your arcade cabinet versus buying an arcade cabinet.
Okay.
And buying finishedly painted miniatures for Warhammer.
Yeah.
That in a lot of cases, I feel like again, do they want to cheat or do they want to build something cool?
Yeah.
And the satisfaction that comes from having incrementally applied focus to the same object over and over and over again, and then you get this thing. Would you have been as satisfied buying the arcade cabinet instead of building it? Would it bring you the same level of pride? And I think for a lot of players, the pride is what they're after. Not vanity pride. Real sense of just salt of the earth. I made a thing and it was hard.
Sure.
For if that's what a player is after, that experience can be built. Mm-hmm. It's different from trying to avoid the rules being janky. Mm-hmm. That's what I was talking about in terms of, are they trying to cheat or are they trying to do something cool?
Sure.
If they're trying to do something cool, you can orchestrate that. That is your job as the dungeon master. If they're trying to skirt the system, it is your job as the dungeon master to stop them from screwing over that players, the players, the rest of the team, the rest of the friends who show up with that person. So I didn't know if you have thought about what it's like to build something and how that's the fun. It's not that you have to necessarily give them a grind component. Mm-hmm. It's that for it to feel satisfying, they have to have put more than just a passing thought into it. And that's the opportunity for crafting.
Sure.
The crafting can be, we're going to spend more than 1 week thinking about this.
All right. Well, so that'll do it for that question. That very, very large question with lots and lots of data and great stuff in there too.
Yeah.
So let's move on to our social media discussion questions, and I'm going to try to blaze through this.
Sure.
We're so late in this episode. Last week's question was, what was the fastest you ever left a gaming group and why?
Oh, right.
I gave my answer last week. I won't bother you guys with that again. Basically, me and Jay joined a group, and then they were terrible. So halfway through the session, we made up a reason to leave, and we left. I feel bad about it, but hey, you do what you do.
Yeah.
On Facebook, Jonathan S. says 2 sessions. The reasoning was that a fee was involved to play, and there were 9 players, so the DM couldn't handle so many. No disrespect to the DM, he did his best. I felt that adding me would weigh too much on his workload.
Whoa. So there was a fee, and the DM couldn't handle? Like,
yeah.
it depends on where the fee is going. like it might have not been the DM.
It might have been maybe like an Adventurers League thing.
Sure. But I mean, like, if it's a DM charging you and he can't handle the load, you need to get your money back.
Yeah, you should maybe listen to a podcast with some guys that complain about
Pay for
DMs charging for sessions. Anyway, Lath says, well, some of us are still in a group, but we left due to some problem players. Now we play at my house. It was about a year before we decided to leave. We really didn't have another option till me and my wife got our own place. Sometimes you stay in a group longer than you maybe should have because it's your only option. You know, sometimes that happens. I've been there. But, you know, it's good to see that Lath seems to be playing with a better group in a better place. Justin says, I quit before the game started. We were invited to play a game with some friends of a friend. We had to drive 3 hours to get there. We were promised dinner, so we didn't pick up anything on the way. We arrived about 30 minutes before the game, discovered that dinner was not provided, so we had to go make a quick run to the restaurant. Well, between the wait and the drive, we made the game start late, about a half hour or so. When we arrived, our buddies' friends and girlfriend were losing their crap about us slowing down the start of the game. They were shouting that D&D isn't a game, but a way of life, all while crying, screaming, and yelling. I was like, F that. I stayed downstairs and played Xbox for 7 hours while they played D&D. I didn't want anything to do with those lunatics.
Oh, well.
Yeah, that... he says in the comments that it's his worst gaming story. I would argue that is a best gaming story. Because, hey, that... You did what you got to do.
Right, yeah.
You got to do.
I got to play some Xbox. It's fine.
Yes. Over on Reddit, Leon the Dude says, 4 weeks at the local game store for Adventurers League. My friends and I were new and all the DMs already had tables of consistent players. So after 3 weeks of no DM or the kids table DM, we decided to stop wasting $5 every week. Over on Discord, Adam B says, this is unfortunate, but 1 hour. I had just moved to Denmark and had begun attending Danish lessons. I'd been searching for a D&D group in order to meet people and make friends. I discovered a gaming group which met up every Thursday to play board games in one room and D&D in another at a local facility where you can rent rooms. I went and asked to join and they agreed. I sat and soon discovered that because I wasn't Danish, I was soon the butt of jokes, ignored and used by the DM as a way to show the group effects of monsters. I got the impression that this group of people had been gaming together for a while, and due to the club's policy, had to agree to me joining, but did not want me there. I attempted several times after this event, but same results every time. Eventually, I started my own group and posted on a looking for a group page. Now, many of the players in my group suffered similar to me via the same people.
Oh, so like he made a group of outcasts of this one.
Sounds like it, yeah. Kind of like when I left the group when I was living in Tennessee that I talked about with my worst DM, like pretty much the entire group left with me to join the group that I was going to be running.
Yeah.
So that really sucks for Adam, but hopefully, it sounds like he's in a better position now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It worked out in the end.
Yeah. And then over on Twitter, just one response, Blandroid said, the GM made pre-gens, only allowed those pre-gens, and was very insistent we stick to the personalities they assigned to the pre-gens. No thanks, go write a book or a play. Making and developing my own character is an important part of any long-term campaign for me. And that's great. Now I pre-make characters for my library game, but if ever anyone made their own character and brought it, thumbs up for me, go for it.
Yeah.
And although I do have like character traits and stuff written in like the character section of the character sheet, I never tell anybody, hey, you have to follow those. And if someone wants to, they can. Great. But I'm not going to make somebody do it. That's, I don't want them to get the experience that I am trying to force on them. Like, right. I want them to see what D&D can be. And, freedom is a part of that. So I try to give as much freedom as I can give in an hour.
Sure.
So anyway, that was the social media discussion question from last week. So thank you to everybody who responded. This week's question: what was your favorite magic item that was crafted specifically for your character?
Aw.
Do you want to cover this now, Jeff? Or since this episode is running very long, would you like to just cover it next week when we have listener responses?
I could see mine because it's pretty simple. Well, okay. It's not simple, but it's I can answer it quickly.
Sure.
There is in the Age of Worms campaign, Gabe gave my character a magic sword that one made my character not so gimped because I multi-classed him.
Right.
And two, it was just really cool because like one it had to do with a magic item that I made up when I was younger and playing second edition, and he he asked Steve about it.
I asked Steve, like, what I've heard Jeff mention this sword that he had. What did it do?
Right.
And then
It was ridiculous. Because that was 12 and it was second edition. So
I kind of I found a way to translate that in my opinion, translate it to what I thought would work and fit well with your character.
Yeah. So, but no, it was a thoughtfully made sword specifically for my character. So cool. I enjoyed it a lot. So,
and then not to toot my own horn, but I did the same thing for Steve. I gave him, I let his axe turn into this axe that he had used in a previous campaign. And then I also gave Jay an intelligent gauntlet that I had randomly generated in the previous campaign that I played with him, and his character really took a liking to it. So then in this new campaign, I gave him the same item. So for me, there was a campaign I mentioned a couple weeks ago, an idea for a campaign where each of the players makes up a powerful artifact. That was partially inspired by a game that I played in where Chris was playing.
Dang.
It was me, Chris, I think Jay, I think Nick was in that campaign too. Anyway, at the beginning of the campaign, Chris decided, because we were all going to be switching up, each player take one of the items that they own, write out what it is, pass it to the player on their right. And then that player looks at the item, comes up with basically makes up a progression for it. And then over the course of the campaign, those players, when they were running, because we were all switching up DMs, that DM would be in charge of giving the previous player, upgrading that item that they had given them. I was playing a character that was part Titan, because we had major bloodline each in that campaign. My character was from a different world where he was once the supreme ruler, and then everybody died, and he was frozen in time. And then the item that I had come up with was basically, it was an item that if anyone recognized what it was, I would be very intimidating to them, because they would recognize, oh crap, that's the guy from that other plane with the whatever. And so Chris looked at it, and over time he had it become more powerful and give me special powers and stuff. And it was just really cool. It's so cool to have someone look at an item that you as a player designed and then build on it.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. So that's what that's something that I always look back to favorably. So yeah, hopefully we get some cool answers for that. If we don't, I know that's kind of a specific question, but
sure.
We'll see what happens. Now I'll quickly go, let's quickly toss, grab a log. Let's lay back, take a deep breath, toss that log onto the funeral pyre, and boom. All right, this was submitted by Mason on Discord. Our party recently fought a Baylor while navigating a rocky pathway over a large lava-filled chasm. The Baylor would routinely cause the ground to shake, and the party would have to roll to avoid falling into the lava. The sorcerer failed such a save and almost died, were it not for the bard diving after him and dimension dooring them both to relative safety. Instead of continuing to run away from the Baylor, half the party committed to fighting it, so the two casters rejoined the fray. The sorcerer continued to close the distance with the Baylor despite being at low health from the previous lava damage, and managed to do a lot more damage over the course of the combat, even striking the killing blow with a lightning bolt. Unfortunately, the Baylor exploded upon dying, as they are wont to do, and said explosion vaporized the sorcerer. So let's raise a glass in memory of the sorcerer who vaped a bit too much.
Clink.
So let me quickly say thank you very much to Steve for joining us in the studio today.
Hey.
All right, so that'll do it for today. To submit questions for us to discuss, items for the Dragon's Hoard, or stories for the funeral pyre, please email us at interpartyconflict.com. For show notes, links to media mentioned on the show, and running lists of questions and magic items, go to interpartyconflict.com. Join the discussion on social media. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/interpartyconflict, our subreddit at r/interpartyconflict, on our Interparty Discord, or on Twitter at InPartyConflict for our weekly social media questions. Your answers might end up on the show. Find us on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, YouTube, anywhere you download podcasts. Please rate, review, subscribe, or just tell a friend. If you'd like to support the show, check out the rewards at patreon.com/interpartyconflict. There's a few different tiers, so anything you can spare, even $1 a month, would go towards making the show better, and you'll get bonus content for it. Jeff, tell us about FriendQuest.
FriendQuest is our YouTube channel where we play video games.
Yes, and a few days ago we did an arcade stream. So
Yeah.
hopefully, thank you everybody who joined us, and hopefully it went well.
Yay.
Check out my arcade side project, the Arcade Memories Podcast, if you'd like to submit your own childhood memories of going to the arcade. Record them or write them to me at arcadememoriespodcast@gmail.com. Also, head over to bit.ly/InterPartyConflict to take a short survey about our show, what you like, what you don't like, etc. And just for taking it, you'll get 2 free printable board games, courtesy of Mary and Tom over at hollandspiel.com. And our music is made by Boxcat Games from Nameless the Hacker's RPG. So, Jeff, until next time.
There's no time, Gabe. There's no time.